A little bit earlier, we told you how a jury found the Boston Marathon bomber guilty on all 30 counts. Now some are saying the real trial is about to begin. And the question is whether Tsarnaev will be sentenced to death. We're joined now by Jennifer Cannon-Unione. She's of the Seattle law firm Dixon and Cannon. Jennifer graduated from Suffolk Law School in Boston, has earned outstanding ratings for representing clients in both civil and criminal cases. Thank you so much for stopping by today. This is obviously a case you are very familiar with.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's first off talk about the case itself, the sentencing phase expected to begin next week. Walk us through how that works.
So this is essentially another trial, and I do expect it. A lot of people are correctly saying this is the real trial. This is where the battle is going to begin in this case. If you look back on the trial itself, you really have a defense that didn't put on much of a defense. They cross-examined a couple witnesses, they put on a little bit of of testimony, but really for the most part, the trial was about them introducing the mitigating factors that they're going to be talking about in the penalty phase itself.
Was that kind of a, he's guilty, but hold reserve judgment because, you know, it wasn't all his fault?
And there are reasons for why he doesn't deserve the death penalty. So an acknowledgement of the heinousness of the crimes, which are unspeakable, but also an acknowledgement that, you know, he's not necessarily a person that deserves the death penalty.
Okay, you had 30 counts here, guilty on every single one. As I understand it, there were 17 of those that triggered the death penalty, so he could get the death penalty, if I understand this correctly, please set me straight, on any one of those 17. And do the jurors have to agree on how many of them? Just one?
Exactly. So it has to be unanimous.
Okay.
But they could be unanimous that he gets the death penalty on any one of those 17 counts that carry the death penalty.
So even if one person held out for 16, as long as that one person was there with the 17th count, then he could get the death penalty.
As long as it's unanimous. But let's say, for example, it's not even unanimous on all 17 counts. Then he gets life in prison without parole. He's not getting out. He's going to be in jail for the rest of his life.
Talk about the criteria of being the worst of the worst when it comes to deciding who should be executed. It sounds like Boston really think this is, and some legal experts we've heard from say, if this case doesn't count, what would?
There's a lot of talk about that because this really kind of is that example of really horrible, heinous, unspeakable crimes. And so and you've kind of seen a preview of that in the trial, and the prosecutors in this case are going to go into much more detail in the penalty phase about the premeditation, the heinousness, the vulnerability of the child that was murdered in this explosion.
You talked a little bit about the defense and the strategy at the get-go. Were you surprised that they went about it that way?
Very interesting strategy. You're right. I mean, tell the jury at the very beginning that your client committed these crimes. There can be a very effective reason for doing this at the outset, and that really is to establish her credibility, Ms. Clark's credibility, which is to say, look, trust me in what I'm telling you. And so what she'll do then in the penalty phase is she's going to stand before the jury, hopefully as a credible attorney, and say, trust me when I lead you on this path to understanding why my client deserves life in prison without parole as opposed to death. You've
got this sentencing phase presumably starting next week. You have the second anniversary of the bombing next week, midweek. Does that have any implications in the sentencing phase, or is the jury, I mean, obviously the jury is probably going to be aware of the timing of all of this.
And I don't necessarily expect that to be addressed, so that I don't necessarily think that's going to have any implications now.
What do you think? I hate to put you on the spot, but what do you think is going to happen with what you've seen so far of this case? I mean, some legal experts have said this is a slam dunk, but that's obviously a matter of opinion.
Really good question, and it's really hard to tell here. there are some horrible, horrible aggravating factors. Yet on the other hand, we have someone that was 19 years old at the time that these crimes were committed. I expect the defense to put on evidence about, you know, the fact that he's young, the fact that he's never been in trouble before, the fact that, and they've laid it out, they started laying it out in the trial itself, the fact that he wasn't he was the lesser participant, so there was someone else, his brother, who was really the mastermind of it.
Just whether those same jurors who found him guilty will buy it.
Yes.
That's the question.
Yes,
Jennifer.
it's a big question.
Jennifer Cannon-Unione, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your
Pleasure.
expertise with us. By the way, for those interested in your work, you can head to DixonCannon.com for more information.